WKOC, the history behind the ministry. Join me for the next few minutes as we take a look at the past, present, and future of Olivet Nazarene University Radio, WKOC. There is a distinct history to WKOC. Throughout the years, radio has blossomed into a 35,000-watt ministry on the FM dial. However, the AM dial was the home of Olivet's first radio station. AM 640 was the spot on the dial for Olivet students to hear WONC, which began broadcasting in 1947. Professor George Snyder headed the radio department, as was known then. After 1 year of broadcasting, they had a program over the air celebrating the first anniversary of WONC. And as part of this program, I want to play that for you. So let's step back in time. It is now February 2nd, 1948, on WONC.
For the past year, WONC has served the students and faculty of Olivet Nazarene College as a religious and educational medium, and looks forward to serving in an even greater capacity in the years that lie ahead. It takes a lot of individuals working together to keep a radio station going. One person who has followed WONC through its first year of broadcasting is the continuity director, Miss Wanda Milner. The next voice you hear will be that of Miss Milner.
WONC is 1 year old tonight, and is usually the custom for birthday anniversaries. Let us thumb through our album of memories and remember some of the happy times we have had together with you, our listening audience. It was an excited, eager group of 16 staff members who watched as Mr. Bernie Smith stepped to the microphone and gave a now familiar sign-on. Good evening, friends. You are listening to radio station WONC, located on the 4th floor of the Olivet Nazarene College Administration Building. Tonight, approximately 50 WONC writers, announcers, production men, and engineers celebrate 1 year of broadcasting activities at Olivet. You might be interested in knowing that more than 50 student ministers have had experience preaching over our campus station these past 12 months. Highlighting the year's broadcasting schedule were such program favorites as Evening Devotions, The Nook Show with Bob Farley, Organ Reveries with Kenny Bate at the console of the Hammond Electric Organ, Student Problem Time, and the exotic romantic Memory Lane. New programs added to the schedule for a better balanced diet for WONC's radio listeners are Sports Mirror, Chat with the Dean, and Ray Hawkins' Quiz program. During the 693 broadcast hours of WONC's lifetime, more than 2,244 programs have been produced. It takes a lot of work to keep a radio station going, and if you don't believe us, just listen to this. According to Professor George Snyder, Director of Radio, more than 12,000 man-hours have been put in our campus station. The studios are located on the 4th floor of the administration building, while the transmitter, constructed by the chief engineer, Marvin Carmody, is housed in the annex. More than 13,000 feet of wire has been strung over the campus. Although much of the equipment in the radio department was purchased through the government war surplus plan, its total value was recently estimated at more than $12,000. WONC is fortunate in having a number of experienced radio students on its staff. Assuming important staff responsibilities, these young people strive to assure Olivetians the best in radio programming and production. Program Director Earl Ferguson spent 3 years as a member of the Continuity Department of CKDI, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. He also spent some of the war years in the radio division of the Royal Canadian Air Force. Mr. Willis Baldridge, the station's ace newscaster, studied radio in Shenandoah, Virginia, and spent some time in the employ of WSVA. Holding a first-class radio engineer's license is WONC's chief engineer, Marvin Carmody. Last summer, he worked for WKAN, Kankakee. He is also a graduate of Dodge Technical School, Valparaiso, Indiana. Recently, Mr. Carmody was elected to the post of interim chairman of the Midwest Division of the Intercollegiate Broadcasting System. WONC, the only campus radio station in the Nazarene movement, was the third Illinois college to join the Intercollegiate Broadcasting System. The period of application in IBS was greatly reduced for Olivet because of the complete radio facilities present. WONC is happy to be affiliated with the Intercollegiate Broadcasting System and is thankful for the privilege of pioneering radio in Nazarene schools. WONC looks forward to a brighter tomorrow, not only in serving the campus of Olivet, but a hinterland of a radius of 100 miles. And, as Bernie Smith, director of WONC activities, said recently in the Glimmerglass article, when that day comes, and it shall, untold thousands shall hear the glorious message of heart purity, and generations yet unborn shall rise up and call us blessed.
WONC has presented Miss Wanda Milner, Continuity Director, in a program celebrating the first year of campus broadcasting activities at Olivet Nazarene College.
Bill Foote, an English professor here at Olivet Nazarene University, had an opportunity to be on WONC when he attended Olivet in the late 40s. WKOC had a purpose Foote described in this way.
WONC had faculty sponsors and support, but it was really a student-operated station whose purpose was to use whatever talents they had and the idea of perpetuating the modern tools of communication in the preparation of a Christian life's work.
He felt that WONC did a terrific job in fulfilling that purpose as Olivet's radio station.
It was into everything. When we had the inauguration of Selden D. Kelly as president of Olivet, WONC was there to record it on tape, or wire in the early days. When we had special speakers in chapel, it was there. When Orpheus or the Choral Union presented something, it was there. It was in everything, including campus interviews, so it fulfilled its purpose very well.
Bill Foote was an English major while attending Olivet Nazarene College, as it was known back then in the late 40s, but he still had time to be busy on WONC.
I became associated with it because of my interest in classical music. I was the person who did all the script writing, did all the researching, and everything for what they call the world's greatest music that was presented every evening.
Foote's experience at WONC is marked by a sense of how organized WONC radio was back in those days. He said they had courses through the speech department in learning how to speak on the radio. They even had slips of paper to fill out when they checked in, how much time we were there. They kept careful track of the hours that they worked.
It was very highly structured, but I didn't feel any pressure at all. I just felt this is part of the way you run any radio station.
The broadcast day at WONC included advertiser-supported programs, student interviews from the Red Room predecessor, the Nook, located in what now is Miller Business Center.
We got a lot of programming from the public radio broadcasting that we could utilize. So it wasn't just strictly Olivet. It wasn't just strictly a little parochial thing that was just on the campus of Olivet. We brought in programming that would not ordinarily be available to the Olivet community.
Professionalism was an aspect of WONC that Bill Foote remembers the best. In fact, he describes one of the things that they've got from WONC.
Each announcer and many other stations had an identification pin with the call letters, but we had one made, and it was not a cheapie. It was very nicely done. WONC, you screw it in your lapel. Very official.
There was a philosophy at WONC that he believes is relevant today.
You take your technical skills, you dedicate them to the Lord, but you do your best right now. You don't wait till you get out to do your best. We made an effort to do our best right then while we were on campus. To me, that's what stood out, that the people who were sponsoring it believed in it and believed that they could give on-the-job training to students and trust them in front of a live mic.
WONC had only 4 years of operation from 1947 to 1951. It became silent for 15 years until Ray Moore came to Olivet in 1966 after several years with the Church of the Nazarene Showers of Blessings broadcast in Kansas City. By that time, the call letters WONC were taken. Currently, North Central College in Naperville, Illinois, has them for their campus-based station. With the call letters WONC taken, WKOC was taken up to stand for Kankakee Olivet College. Professor Moore's arrival to ONC coincided with plans Olivet was busy with to build our student center, Ludwig Center. So Moore suggested and completed studios on the second floor of Ludwig Center, close to the drinking fountain on second floor today in 1987. January 26, 1967 was the first day of WKOC's official programming to the Kankakee area. What many people probably don't realize is that the class of 1941, at their 25th anniversary reunion in June of 66, had taken on the task of raising the necessary funds to get the radio project going, according to the spring 1967 alumni newsletter. In that same article, it described WKOC's programming as good listening format, with occasional capsules of inspirational and devotional material. WKOC was different than WONC in that WKOC was licensed as a non-commercial educational FM broadcast station. So FM 89.7 was the home for WKOC, in opposed to the AM dial that WONC was so fond of. With 10 watts of power, WKOC had a 92-foot tall tower on the west side of Ludwig Center. It was at the station's beginning that Norma Romey, then Norma Wickham, now Secretary to the Department of Fine Arts at Olivet Nazarene University, enters the radio scene at Olivet Nazarene College.
I was a communications major, and one of the things I wanted to take was radio broadcasting. You were only allowed to take a 2-hour course for credit, and then beyond that I continued working because in the spring of that year, 1966, we began the radio station, and I was one of the first broadcasters on the station.
She remembers WKOC's purpose in its beginning years.
We were wanting to provide a religious format to a radio station. We were wanting to use it as a public relations tool for the college, I believe. And we wanted people in the community to know that we were here and we had something to offer. It was also a teaching tool for students who wanted to pursue a career in broadcasting.
As part of the format back then, she remembers that they had to bring in their own records to play.
We brought in our own records, and we had a very low budget. Ray Moore had gotten together the reel-to-reel machine that I think it had been a carryover from WONC. It looked like an antique anyway. And we had one cassette or 8-track board that was just didn't work very well most of the time, and we were all afraid of it because 8-tracks were relatively new. Everything was either reel-to-reel or records.
The average listener back in the beginning days of WKOC could expect a lot of different things.
It brought basically an alternative to some of the secular music that our music, any age person could listen to, not be offended. Older people or younger than teenage people may not want to hear some of the popular music today. Certainly Christian people wouldn't want to hear all of the popular music today, and the same applied then. And so it brought something that they could do other things while listening to the radio, not find any of the language offensive or the thoughts in the music offensive, and yet it would be light entertainment for their day.
Mrs. Romey really enjoyed working at WKOC in those beginning years. She describes her feelings about her WKOC work.
Oh, I remember feeling like pioneers. We were scrounging around for every piece of equipment we could get. We found some old wood paneling somewhere, and that was our wall divider, and we would bring in our own take-up reel for the reel-to-reel things sometimes because one would break or we didn't have enough, and our records were all donated things. So we were really just scrapping to do what we could do.
Mrs. Romey also recalls WKOC's lack of listeners in those first years. She believed that the students viewed it as an experiment, and she didn't think that a lot of kids in the dormitories listened to it, but those who knew the particular person broadcasting at a particular time would listen. The lack of listeners didn't bother her because she thought that it takes time to develop a radio station, and develop it did, as Professor Moore went back to Kansas City, and Professor Don Toland became part of the Olivet faculty in 1977 with a speech communication assignment. One of the first things that Professor Tolan did in order to help WKOC increase listener support was to apply to the Federal Communications Commission for a power increase to 420 watts with a stereo signal. Up until this time, WKOC was broadcasting in mono. The power increase and stereo signal was granted, so in the spring of 1982, WKOC began stereo broadcasting at an increased power of 420 watts. Hence, the focus of the station changed from Olivet Nazarene University to a 20-mile radius from ONC. Shortly after 1967, positions at WKOC were defined. When Ray Moore retired at the end of the 1982-83 school year, Professor Tolan became the Director of Broadcasting Services for ONC. Before this time, the idea of an executive staff for WKOC came into being, including a program manager, business manager, tape traffic director, production director, music director, news director, sports director, and a promotions director. In its beginning days of broadcasting, WKOC was on the air 4 hours a day, from 7 to 10, and on Sundays from 3 in the afternoon until 10 at night. But by the 1984 school year, not only were there measures taken to make WKOC more available to cars, but there was also an automation unit installed so that WKOC could provide service to the area while students were in classes or on breaks. And so it was that WKOC began broadcasting 18 hours a day, 365 days a year. For the first time in its history, WKOC was on the air over the long summer breaks, hiring advanced broadcast students to run it over that time. Shortly after this big step in broadcasting at Olivet, a UPI wire service was added to allow WKOC to cover national and state news as it was happening around the nation and the state. The most recent chapter in Olivet radio history was written Labor Day 1986. This was WKOC's first day of ministry at 89.7 FM with 35,000 watts. We were granted these changes by the Federal Communications Commission in March of '87. From March until September, construction went underway for our new 430-foot-tall tower, located by the ONU tennis courts. WKOC revamped its format for the power change. Since now we can be heard from 60-plus miles away, the Skylight Satellite Network was added to our programming day, giving us UPI audio newscasts every hour or so. This network will enable WKOC to broadcast 24 hours a day in the near future. Bill Foote enjoys WKOC's ministry today.
The progression that I've noticed in the last 20 years is all for the good, very positive. I'm glad to see that they're really realizing what a ministry radio is.
Norma Romey expressed a good opinion about WKOC today also.
Well, I'm happy to say there have been a lot of positive changes. Over the years, different attitudes have prevailed and different programming has brought out different things. There for a while it seemed too inner campus. It seemed like there was a lot of reference to things that only campus people would understand. And I'm happy to see that the FM station has a more professional attitude.
Many students have gone through the broadcasting program at Olivet Nazarene University since 1966. And just in the past 3 years, you've heard people such as
Don Tolan,
Frank Garton,
Norman W. Bloom,
Don Bumstead,
Ted Dorsey,
Brian Williams,
Rob West,
Stephanie Dillon,
Stephen Kay,
Janet Galloway,
Kevin Brown,
Carolyn Gailing,
Steve McKenzie,
Milo Singleton,
Bobby Brooks,
Todd Chapman,
Laura Kelly, Joanne DeFries,
Bob Rashkin,
Ellen Hurst,
Robin Tober,
Blair Gordon,
Tanya Doobie.
Steve Krampitz. From studios in 4th Floor Burke, WONC, to studios in Ludwig Center, WKOC. We are now located in the 3rd floor of Benner Library. AM 54 is the campus station now, with WKOC FM serving northeastern Illinois and northwestern Indiana. WKOC, a history of ministry to Olivet and beyond. Our thanks go to Bill Foote and Norma Romey for their cooperation in this effort. WKOC, the history behind the ministry, has been a Heartland presentation.